Hello, and a very good morning to everyone. I hope everyone here is awake on this Saturday morning. I can assure you that when the session starts, you will get the boost that you get with your morning coffee. A very warm welcome to CSAM 2020, organized by Team Matrix, Symbiosis Center for Information Technology, Pune. Realizing the need of security awareness in day-to-day lives, a group of like-minded security enthusiasts came together at SCIT Pune to form Team Matrix in the year 2009. It is dedicated to research and spreading awareness in the area of information security. We focus on the process as well as the technical aspects of security. After all, security is as good as your weakest link. ISACA student group encourage education beyond the classroom by allowing students to network and learn from each other and connect with supportive group of professionals. It aims to expand the recognition of IT and assurance and security and IT governance disciplines. We would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our sponsor, ISACA. Our SCIT ISG members, Anurag Pandey, Aishwarya Kulkarni, Vaishnavi Kokitkar, and Ashwin S., have been a constant source of ignition for our quest for information security knowledge. This event would not have been possible without the constant support of Vidyavati ma'am and Angelina ma'am, and persistent encouragement from our director Dhanya ma'am, Deputy Director Kanchan ma'am, and Admin Officer Savita ma'am. The Cybersecurity Awareness Month is our flagship event where we celebrate the month of October as a month of security awareness. We believe that security is an integral part of everyday life. So why only October? The answer may be seen like this. It is our festival where we reiterate our commitment for security awareness. Presenting to you a teaser for the event. May we please play the teaser? Welcome back. Our theme for CSAM 2020 is Cyber Self-Reliance, Immunizing Against Cyber Deception. We have been dependent on global players for our cybersecurity needs for a long time now. The economic downfall due to COVID-19 has once again emphasized the need to be self-reliant for our security needs. The rising cases of cyber threat remind us that we were not well prepared to deal with this pandemic. As immunizing ourselves against this global pandemic is necessary, similarly, immunizing our systems against the digital pandemic is also very important. With this short brief on our theme for CSAM 20, let me introduce to you the topic for panel discussion. The topic for panel discussion CSAM 2020 is Rearming the Seeds of Cyber Defense, a 360-degree approach to IT security. Cybercrime has been a growing concern in the present era of digitalization, where organizations vastly depend on computers and communication networks for their business. Long gone are the days when data and privacy could be protected just by putting a password. So one needs to think 360, which means protection against those unknown advisories, insider threats, ever evolving attack vectors, and many more. One needs to regularly review their security posture in this constantly changing threat environment so as to thwart any attack beforehand. With this, I would like to welcome our esteemed guests for today's event. We have with us Mr. Sudarshan Rajgopal, Mr. Muslim Kosar, Ms. Mrudul Uchil, Ms. Neelu Tripathi, Mr. Shyam Sundar Ramaswamy, and Mr. Kushagra Mehra. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. A very warm welcome to everyone. All the faculty members at SCIT, our esteemed guests, students, and our lovely audience. I'm sure you all are equally excited as me for the keynote speech and panel discussion. I would now like to welcome our director, Dr. Dhanya Pramod, to formally welcome the guests and inaugurate the event.
Thank you, Remy, and very good morning to everyone present here. Our chief guest for the day, Mr. Sudarshan Rajgopal. Our panelist for the day, Mr. Muslim Kosar, Mr. Mrudul Uchil, Ms. Neelu Tripathi, Mr. Shyam Sundar, and our moderator, Kushagra Mehra. A very warm welcome to all of you to Symbiosis Center for Information Technologies Cyber Security Awareness Month 2020, hosted by our own students group Team Metrics in association with ISACA. So it is a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this platform to share your experience and expertise in this particular field. Long back in 2005-6, SCIT has initiated this cybersecurity program wherein we felt the need of creating professionals in the area of cybersecurity. And today, SCIT is one of the pioneer institute in offering this specialization, and our students have reached out to almost all organizations who are into, especially into cybersecurity audit. So it's our privilege to have you all for today's discussion, and I am sure today's discussion will definitely give a value add for our students and also give an assurance to our faculty members in bridging the gap between the academics and the industry practices. So even the ISACA student group that we have started way back in 2012, this is the first student chapter in India. And also, we are the only one institution from India who could align our curriculum to ISACA's model curriculum for IT control and audit. So there we stand as an institution who is uniquely providing the kind of academics and industry exposure to our students. And in this journey, ISACA has supported us so very well. In association also with Data Security Council, we have conducted some earlier events. So I thank all the ISACA board members for supporting our students in this kind of initiatives and all our industry experts who have handholded our students in this journey of becoming information security experts. So I wish all the best for this particular event today and the subsequent events which we have planned as competitions for the information security aspirants. And I am sure you all have been kind enough to spare your today's time for discussing on this particular platform. So looking forward to the discourse today to understand the latest practices in cyber defense and how organizations are looking at cyber deception and the anti-hacker techniques that you have been coming up with. So with that note, once again, welcome to the keynote speaker and all the panelists. And I declare that the event is open. Thank you all and all the best for the event.
Thank you, ma'am. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce and welcome our keynote speaker for today, Mr. Sudarshan Rajgopal. Sir is a Senior Information Security and IT Executive at Shell India Markets Private Limited, with 2 decades of experience in business management and security consulting. Sir has expertise in areas like IT security strategy, IT risk management and governance, vulnerability management, infrastructure and application security, design and reengineering, governance, risk and compliance, enterprise defense strategies, hacking and countermeasures, and energy management. On behalf of Team Matrix and SCIT, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us, and we are excited to learn and gain industry insights from you. Audience is requested to please put their questions in the chat box post this speech. We will be taking up them later. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me here. This is really a pleasure to be here. I wasn't expecting it to this scale, but now looking at all of you guys and the numbers of people over here and the event the way it is, I think we are in safe hands and things are going to be better for the IT industry. So with that, one second, I'll just start my video. I just didn't realize. Yeah, so with that, let me just talk about the topic. What you have given me is self-reliance and immunization against cyber deception. I would rather talking about the hacker countermeasures or just getting into the cyber deception in an area. I would like to bring in my topic what would probably go forward with the theme of this event is to tell how 360-degree we would want to look at, or how you would want to look at from a immunizing of cyber deception or any kind of attack. What are the ways we can probably reach there, and then what do we do beyond that? Talking on, say, security strategy or the business value, what security brings in, and these are something which are really big, which the organization looks at the revenue model, then the cyber practices, what we should have, what are the hygienes, what we should look at. So some of these things is what I would like to talk about. Now, when we talk about IT security per se, it is more to look at from an or an IT security strategy. Now that we're talking about ISACA, so there is this 3-line of defense model, which has clear segregation of roles and responsibilities. Now, there is a line of defense 1, or which is called a first line of defense. Then you call the second line of defense, or LOD 2, and then you have LOD 3. Let me quickly brief about how the line of defense 1, 2, 3 work. So the line of defense 1 is basically the doers. They are the hands on ground, hands on deck, people who hold the screwdriver, dirty their hands, whatever you want to call it. But they are the doers. They are along with the business, and they actually implement the stuff. They put in the controls. They check the controls and stuff like that. In here, you see the team also of the vulnerability management or penetration testing team, which also comes in, who are the ethical hacker who actually finds a lacuna in the system and tell you that how to fix it or what needs to be fixed. This team also has the prevent from vulnerability management, and also detect from the monitoring perspective, where you have a team which monitors the traffic which is coming in, and any anomaly which you see, you actually look at it, that how what needs to be done there, depending on the anomaly. Then you have the respond team, which also falls into the LOD 1, which is basically the incident management. So in case there is an incident which has happened, and we need to correct it, or we need to curtail it, this team comes into picture on that. Then you come to the LOD 2. The line of defense 2 is typically a team which oversees these things, or it's the team which is basically the information risk management team in the larger perspective, which has your policy writing processes and all that thing. And then they also oversee the policies or the processes are executed well, the risks are managed well from the LOD 1 perspective. So they are the overseer, and they are the assurance team, they are the advisory team for the organization. Then we need a third party to look at through an audit glass to these two, and that is where you have the team of LOD1, which is the LOD3, which is the auditing team, which can be internal and external audit. So there are certain areas where people call LOD4 as external, but for my reference, I keep LOD3 as both internal and external auditors. So that's the way the strategy needs to be built up. Now, why do we build up the strategy is basically to look at from a perspective of secure by design. Uh, it goes with the adage, right? The safety is better than is that what it is? Yeah. So it's better to be safe than sorry, right? So the way in here we look at it, when you conceptualize a product or an offering, what you need to make, you might want to look at it from perspective of um, what security controls you need. How do you secure it? How is it viable? What all can go? Now that with people like you who have been educated in security right in college days, and security being so big, I think we come with a perspective of a mind of knowing the subject. So when we plug in along with the people who are designing or conceptualizing these applications or whatever product they're designing, the security aspect is built in right from the beginning. And then you get into the architectural perspective, the solutioning perspective, and everywhere you have a leg of security person built in, so that whatever is known at that point in time, whatever damage can be done or whatever controls can be put in, is put in right then and there, rather than looking at it hindsight. um, and uh, and this is the way you might want to bring in secure by design. Now that the privacy is kicking in, so privacy by design also comes into this part, and that is how you would want to build the or rather want to get the security team involved in the whole sorry in the whole thing. So that's why I think secure by design, it makes a lot of sense. But let's also understand, how does cybersecurity create certain business value? Now, of course, the underlying areas for cybersecurity is from the safety, from the operations, the delivery of a project, if you look at it, and bringing in transparency. For a very long time, people felt that security is something which is sitting in a black box. People don't tell us, and they have an exotic life. And movies actually make us look like we live a James Bondish life. It's true, but it's not true as well. So I think these are certain major tasks which the security team brings into the table and keeps the company secure. Uh, it also helps running the business in terms of maintaining. So once you do the secure by design and you put into operation, you find new vulnerabilities. Now, the recent one, which was major, which was big, was a few years back, called as WannaCry, which was a ransomware attack, Eternal Blue. I'm sure you guys know about all that. Uh, these were certain patches which were needed for the organization to be put in, and those patches were not put in on time, and that is how a huge attack globally happened. What we can do for this is probably the team which does the vulnerability management creates a list of vulnerability, or the people who are designing are in the part of secure by design or designing the controls. There are usually exceptions when you are creating a product. There are usually exceptions what are being given, what the business wants, and says, we will not fix it now, we don't have the budget now, you need to do it later. All that comes in. These teams actually maintain a vulnerability list and then fix it well in time before an attack happens, or monitor it till these things are addressed. So that's the way we look at it. um, let me change the gear a bit and talk about something which we are going through right now. And it's interesting to see that pandemic has been said so many times, and I think we are living in with the new ways of working, basically working from home with minimal infrastructure earlier than getting used to, getting accustomed to it. But what happened from a cyber risk perspective in those days? I'll just give a few examples of that, and you can probably extrapolate from there. Um Something like a phishing attack. There was a huge spike in phishing attack, which was using the hook of COVID-19. These were for harvesting credentials or direct users to malicious websites, and distribute their ransomware. These are the kind of things what is happening with phishing, especially with very well-known people or publicly exposed people. This is also talking from a perspective of spear phishing, which is very targeted. So you look at it, it looks like extremely legit because they have done amazing homework on you, and then they write a very specific mail to you. And these things were prevalent and are prevalent in these times. So um, that's one of it. Then also a lot of people who are using uh, home working are usually fed up with the kind of network they are getting, or the applications not working. They're not able to connect to their peers and stuff like that, so they use non-approved or vulnerable tools which can be cyberjacked, which can be used as a pawn, which for to your system and to attack. So those are also one of the major vulnerabilities what we are seeing. Uh, Also, because of limited bandwidth or limited time or multiple number of restarts what the system would need at any point in time, the end users delay the critical patches or critical updates which come in. Now, we all are cybersecurity fraternity, we understand it well, but there are people who are not cyber savvy, and they do not update these things. And when they do not update these things, as I said a few minutes back on the WannaCry kind of an incident, this is how these incidents starts happening. So this also needs to be understood or taken care of. Uh, the other thing is about criminal people with the intent of hijacking your home network. They can, if you do not have proper SSIDs, proper passwords, proper range, which will not fall into a war driving kind of a thing. Uh, you are vulnerable for a cyber criminal to come and compromise your network. I mean, if I may quote a very interesting example, there was a CEO of a company in Bombay. He was a non-Indian resident. Rather, he was not even an Indian. In July 2007, when the Bombay train blast happened, the IM had actually used his Wi-Fi network to send an email, and that's where it became a big problem. And this was highlighted. Of course, it is like 13 years back, but I think this still prevails. We still do war driving, and we see how bad the situations are. Um, the other thing is also from an insider threat, mostly for confidential work which we do. The trust and the integrity of a person has to be trusted completely. That the data is not siphoned off unknowingly by the person uh, who's basically authorized to access these data. So just my last topic, which I would want to talk about beyond this, is on the remote work again, on how do we manage risk. I think there has to be a very strong cyber policy. Now, this also comes from your cyber deception or malwares or whatever you want to call it, but we need to have a solid cyber policy, and that is where you have something like what kind of encryption is needed, what tools to use for email or file transfer, what is the size of it, how do we check it, um, how do we increase or how do we access the work applications remotely, and what can happen, guidelines for, say, password safeguarding, how, because at office there are only colleagues who come in, but at home there are a lot of people who come who are known and unknown. And a lot of people have makeshifts office, so they sit in the living area and work, so which can be dangerous. Uh, Also about do's and don'ts on social media. We go through a lot of mental fatigue. We do not see the people face to face, and especially in these times. it can bring in a lot of stress. It can bring in a lot of mistrust as well, right? So that is where you look at that. What are the do's and don'ts of social media? How do you manage that? And then, of course, the most important thing, which I think is from the endpoint security, which needs to be very strong and has to be monitored on this. So this is where I would like to just end my talk, and would like to open up for any queries you might have for me.
Hello everyone. We are opening chat for questions now. Please put your questions in the chat, please.
Uh, Anurag, we can allow them to unmute themselves and ask the questions directly also.
Um, Hello sir, we have a question in the chat. Someone has asked to what extent cybersecurity policies have changed during this pandemic.
So they now change is, there can be a delta, there can be much, but I think what has happened mostly from a cyber security perspective is the way you access tools, what are the applications which you cannot put in, how the updates should happen, uh, how often are you restarting the system. These are few things which have been very clearly now documented in certain organizations. Certain organizations have made drastic changes, and certain organization has, of course, not made any changes, maybe because they were already mature over there. So there is definitely an iota of change, or there is a drastic change in certain organizations. To what extent is something I would not have an answer, probably because we are in the middle of the pandemic right now. But the way I would say it is that for a need to know base, for a need to use basis in the organizations have taken steps to to change the policies as such, or the processes as such.
Another related question in the chat, sir. So someone has asked that how should we adapt the cybersecurity controls to address the new work from home policies?
I think that's an interesting question. The way I would look at it is that, first of all, don't use default passwords on your router. Let the routers would not be accessible to anyone and everyone. Keep a strong password. Keep an SSID maybe hidden if you can. If you can't, then uh, ensure that the SSID is accessible only within the vicinity where you want it to be. These are the few things which you might want to look at it. WPA2 is a good security encryption, what you might want to use it. Also, keep an eye on the router log if you have, or have the notification on in the router, where in case anyone new joins and any new IP join, any new MAC address joins it, or any new devices joins it, you get a notification so that you are aware of it. I think these are certain things which I can definitely think of from a criticality perspective.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question is, nowadays spear phishing is prevailing and it's affecting small and medium sized organizations a lot. So is there any way to mitigate this kind of an attack?
Yeah, so I think to mitigate, yes. To stop, no. uh, to stop is something like, can you stop people from burglary or robbing, however secure you are? I mean, people are always smart, right? So mitigate, yes. Uh, Please understand, the hackers, the people who use vulnerability attacks, attack you. I like what Remy said right in the beginning, that security as strong as is the weakest link, and that's the mantra what we have right from day one when we join security, right? The attackers would always attack you at your most vulnerable point, which means that you need to be aware of uh, of what mail you're opening, it is like, I mean, if I may say, I need 10 lakh rupees, God give me 10 lakh rupees, and suddenly you see someone saying that I want to sell my business to you and or manage your business, I can give you 20 lakhs, and you say, God, my prayer is answered. You click everything. That's not how it should happen. Of course, that's probably my generation. Your generations are much smarter, but the attackers are also smarter. So I would say that be vigilant. Look at the email header, look at the email ID which is coming, where it is coming from. Check for the spellings. Look at the domain in case it looks suspicious. And if it is suspicious, you can't still find out it's, and you know the person, call them, ping them in a different mode and check if they have sent it. If not, leave it. I mean, it's okay. People will get back to you in a different mode. I think you need to be conscious about what you're doing, and that's probably one of the ways you can avoid phishing. It's just to be vigilant at any point in time. Use spam filters properly if you have an organizational spam filter. That's what I would say. And also see to it that your email address do not float everywhere. Is one of the ways you can look at. Have different email IDs for public domains, and have one for your own personal use, where you have your bank statements or your critical data coming in.
Thank you so much. We have one last question coming up. So, sir, how effective is our cybersecurity strategy at as a whole country to address business risk?
So, strategy, I understand what you're asking is from a company perspective or from the country perspective. The country has its own cyber policy, and I'm not privy to that. I'm not gone through it, but I think we have the new cyber policies which are coming in looks pretty robust. They need upgrades, but what they do usually is they draw a framework, and that's where you need to work in. But from a company perspective, I think most of the companies are putting in pretty good cyber security, cyber resilience kind of thing. There are incidents which keep on happening. I think today morning I was reading one of big retailers of I think food marketing. Those people have been ransom attacked very recently, I think yesterday or today, and they've been asked to pay a sum. So these things will keep on happening, but I think what matters is that how good is your traceability, how well you can go back and catch what went wrong, if not the person, at least what went wrong, so that you have your learnings. That is how I would look at it. But from a country perspective, I'm really sorry. I think it is good, but I'm not privy to it, or I have not read it for the last 2-3 years, so I might not be able to answer that.
Uh, Thank you so much. So this is one thing that I was wishing to ask from an academic perspective. So we have been studying a lot about how digital transformation is taking place at a very, very, very fast scale, especially during this pandemic when everybody needs to go digital due to the prevailing situations. So do you think our cybersecurity strategies are able to adapt to such a rapid digital transformation? Because that increases the attack vectors that we currently have.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. Uh, it's a race. You win some, you lose some. So so let's understand. There are different kind of companies. So there is a technology company which is probably IT technology company. They would be at a rapid pace ramping up their technologies to be taken care of. Um, there would be companies which would be non-IT company where IT would be just a support function. They would look at the changing of cyber strategy on a lower periodic basis, or rather longer periodic basis. Then you have banks where customer data is the most important, and they're highly on target. So they would look at it, changing it like this. But let's also understand. It it does not change overnight. I mean, the cyber, at least what I have seen is things do not change overnight. As long as you are patching yourself well, you're taking the precautions, you will not be affected that badly initially, even if there are certain things. And then you have mitigation ways. How do you quarantine yourself? How do you cut off yourself and stuff like that? But uh, there are very few areas where you might have an overnight change which can come and kill the entire network, which is possible. I've seen it once or twice in my career till now. This might happen more prevalent, and you're right. I think it is only about adaptability and being on top of the game at every point in time, and people are working on that. I think with academia taking over security. So when I started career in security, there was no security institution, and we all started by ourselves. I think most of the people, panelists who might be there, if they are from the same generation, they can they will all be self-taught. But now, for the last 15 years or so, we see a lot of academia interest in that, and people coming out with probably better knowledge than what we have, which is super good. So that's how I think things will improve going forward. That's my view.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Uh, if possible, there are a couple of more questions coming in. So, someone has asked that cyber criminals have drastically shifted their attack strategies to stay very hidden from the current IDS IT systems. So, are we prepared to address those?
Uh, yes, yes, and no. Are we is if you're talking from an industry perspective, yes, the industry is aware of these things. So there are backdoors, there are people who have hidden. So a very good example, what you guys all would know is the dark web or the Tor network, right? So initially when it came in, it was thought that you can't be traced, you can't be caught. So they had an advantage initially, and then you suddenly realize that the endpoints are still monitored. There are people uh, who are defense people also getting in the same network or the onion ring, and saying that, okay, let me also siphon it, let me check the data. So you never know where the data is going, but people are able to trace it back. I think there are some smart people whom you would not get through. There are some people whom you would get through. So it's again like a race. But if you ask me, is the technology prepared for that? I think yes. If you can go one way, there is definitely the other way. It's just the way you look at it and the time you have to look at it. That's a simple answer.
Uh, so, someone has asked that could you please talk a little bit about cloud-based security? This is also very important because while learning ethical hacking, we also have come across that there are a very few cloud-based security courses compared to the network security courses which are in the majority. So, what are your views about this?
Uh, Cloud is an interesting space. Now, it actually brings in certain dilemmas, right? When you talk about cloud. So if you take a service like a platform as a service, or say software as a service, what the organize so there is a seller organization and there's a buyer organization. So the vendor has the container or the Docker, which is the vendor's purview to look at it, and that is what they would secure. While you look at the buyer or the client organization, they have the control over their data or their application or their infrastructure, whatever they have taken. And this is also a shared network. So with cloud security, I think the major thing is on the contracting, what I would look at it, and the how do they build in assurance for you from a vendor perspective, and you being a client, what all can you secure from your perspective, and what you can let go is the way you would look at it. So this is the way on a high level what cloud security how you would look at the cloud security model, or bringing of cyber from a cloud security perspective. Mind you, there are a lot of challenges in cloud, because if you have a shared cloud, my data would be residing there and so would be yours. If I suddenly scan the entire network, or see a lacuna in your side, you can sue me and you can sue them because I'm unauthorized going to you, and you can sue the vendor because the vendor is not kept it proper. So these are certain dilemmas which we need to address, and I think the industry is growing towards that side. But yeah, these are few pointers what I can give you on a cybersecurity perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. That was really insightful. So someone has asked a question about your current keynote speech. So he has asked that you talked about the connection of stress, mind, and social media. So how can we change the impact of social media that it is having on us with related to cybersecurity and technological connections?
It's a interesting question again. I think first of all, have real friends. uh, I do not have an answer. It's more to do from a behavioral perspective. What happens is what we read is what affects us. What we put is what affects us. We get indulged in that and sucked into it. I think somewhere you need to cut off from the social media. Somewhere you need to cut off of what you're saying. Um I'll tell you very interestingly, if you dig down to someone who's very what do you say, extrovert or very talkative on social media, if you skim the data very well, you can find a lot of details about that person, a lot of details, not psychologically, but maybe what kind of passwords they might be using, what kind of things they might be doing. And then you have these people, what they eat, what they put, where they go. Of course, you guys have heard the stories of those things. I think there has to be a refrainment to understand what you can put and what you can't. We all go through a mental state of disgruntledness, a mental state of not having any person, to having a lot of people, to stress, to whatever. You can write. You don't have to post it and show it to everyone, and don't do a knee jerk reaction. I think there's no standard answer, but it's from a security perspective. I think the world needs to know on a need to know basis, not everything, and that's the way you might want to look at it. It's a tough question. It's a behavioral thing which needs to be changed in that perspective.
Thank you so much, sir. So, one of the students have asked, can you please talk about enhancing security in ERP systems?
Sorry, what security? Enhancing security on
Yeah.
ERP systems. Uh, I do not follow the question pretty well. Enhancing security in the ERP system can be from the segregation of duty perspective, what you might look at, from a traceability perspective, from wherein maker and checker are two different entity, two different people who are doing it, and then there's someone who's auditing it on a regular basis. The system does not let you go forward. Those are the few things which I can think of, but I'm sorry, I do not follow the question because it's extremely broad from an ERP what should be, because it can be underlying infrastructure, it can be the
Yeah.
database what you're looking at, or it can be the front end what you're looking at.
So, sir, to narrow down the question, I have a personal experience working in an ERP company. So, what we analyzed was that in an ERP system, there was a lot of surface vectors for SQL injections. And the developers, since there is this culture that a lot of developers are very averse from security practices, so the developers had to be trained and they had to like manually go and patch each and every line of code where there was a possibility of SQL injection. But as we know, humans are the weakest link, and it is highly possible that something like this could the developers could miss out on that, and a possible attack vector could be created. So in that sense, what is your take on?
Okay, no, thank you for helping me with that. So I think what I was talking about in the beginning on secure by design. Now, SQL injection has been there ever since, and it will be there for a longer period of time. It will never go off, and I think it still is in the top 10 list of OWASP, right? So, secure by design is one of the ways I look at it, where you have standard coding practices, and these standard coding practices comes from um, the maturity of security, also what we bring in, where we are talking about what kind of codes need not have to go. How do you do a SQL injection or an XSS attack or a session attack or those kind of things? How you avoid them right at the coding level, and then look at it. Then once it is coded, I think we should do a code scanning or have a process of checking a code scan, and in case you find those errors, you go back and then you look at the controls, what are there from the infrastructure perspective on top of it, where it is sitting, because SQL injection might not be there in your system, but the underlying system might carry it, or the overlapping system might carry it. Then the other perspective you might want to look at it is after the product is ready, get a penetration test done and constantly do a vulnerability management to check vulnerability assessment to check if there are any challenges which are coming in. I think these are few process wise you might want to constantly. So security is not one time game, right? It's a constant thing what you might want to run it, and that's how you would look at it. Does that answer your question, Anurag?
Yeah, sir, definitely does. So someone has asked an interesting question from an attacker's point of view. So they have asked that MNCs have their own platform which can be only accessed through company assets, and moreover, they also frequently patch their systems. So, what is a probable attack methodology that an attacker can use to penetrate into this secured in a single grid network?
Yeah, so not every company makes a Fort Knox. I mean, it's also on need to know basis, and security is mostly, as we both discussed a while back, is on human error basis. What you look at it. Um, while, say, for example, I create a company where I have my own product, which is most secure, is what I believe, but it has the same coding. It has probably written in C or Java or C++ or .NET or whatever, right? And this would access a database. So just linking it to your previous question, it will have a SQL code, which means there is a possibility of SQL injection, which might happen. Um, let me let me tell you something very interesting. I met a friend who's a very good developer. I mean, I have not seen a coder better than him in my life. And once I was just talking about SQL injection to him, and he says, "What is that?" And then when he realized that what is SQL injection, he says, "I never thought from that perspective. This is how you guys hack it, is it?" And then he looked at changing the way he codes. So again, when you talk about a company probably which is making its own product and is completely secure and is keeping it airtight, maybe they might not be able to hack it, maybe they might be able to hack it, and it's all about one small vulnerability what someone needs to find through an access. I'm sure you guys know about it. Social engineering is one of the methods. If you have read the book of Kevin Mitnick, Art of Deception, it will give you some interesting anecdotes of, even if you are the most secure, even if you're airtight, how people can get into your organization. Um, I think that's that's what I might have for this question.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. So, someone has asked that in this pandemic, when everyone is working from home, so how does organizations manage their risk assessment and mitigation remotely?
So while people are working from home, most of the companies have VPN through which you connect to your system, which means your system is connected to their central servers. And the patch levels are checked through the agents what are installed on the system. Most of the companies, most of the MNCs might be doing that. I can't talk about SMEs and all, but people who connect through VPN or people who need to be patched on a regular basis, they get patched. Most of the data is sitting on the servers nowadays or in the cloud, and that is anyway secured because that is always remotely monitored. So the systems are monitored remotely using the agents which are there, which can be in any kind of endpoint security which is installed. And even the IPs can be traced from where you're logging in, which city and stuff like that.
Thank you, sir. That really answered all the questions, and it was really insightful to have an interaction with you. So, over to you now, Remy.
Yes. Thank you, Anurag. Thank you so much, sir. It was really a very insightful session. Among all the important things that you said, I think I'll take away these two things, that security and its adaptations for everyone has indeed become an essential thing in today's scenario, and that we need to be prepared for any change in the environment so that we can adapt to any new attack vector. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for having me here, and you guys put me on the edge with the questions. Keep that coming. Very nice, and all the best to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
With
you.
this, I think we can take a bio break of 5 minutes. Please don't leave the session. Please, everyone, stay connected and join back by 11:25. We'll be waiting for you here. Thank you so much, everyone. Please do not leave the meeting. Hello, Muslim sir. So while everyone is on bio break, can we do some technical check? Are we audible to you?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, so welcome to the panel discussion, sir.
Thanks a lot.
I will formally welcome you. This is just a technical check.
Yeah, not a problem at all.
Neelu ma'am.
Hi, Remy.
Hi, Neelu ma'am. How are we audible to you?
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome to the panel discussion.
Thank you.
Shyam sir.
Hey, hi, good morning.
Hi, sir. How are you? Good morning.
I'm good, thank you. Is my audio clear? My video is fine?
Yes, sir. Your audio and video both are perfect.
Perfect.
I hope we are audible to you.
Yes, you are.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us today.
No problem, my pleasure.
Hello, Kushagra sir.
Hey, you should be
Hi, sir.
saying,
How are you? Good morning.
good morning. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, sir.
Is my
I
audio,
hope.
video, and everything fine?
Yes, sir. Your audio and video both are perfect.
Awesome.
A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So we'll be starting the session again in 1 minute or so. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'll be formally welcoming you again. Hello. Welcome everyone. Welcome back. So we'll restart this event. I'm greatly delighted to now kickstart the panel discussion for CSAM 2020. We are deeply thrilled to be able to organize this event with such an esteemed panel amidst the limitations posed to us by the global pandemic. Our panel today hold immense experience and knowledge in the fields of cyber and information security. They have been in the industry for a long time and have seen the industry changing phases. I hope we can leverage on their knowledge to build our own and contribute back to the society. Without any further delay, let me welcome our panel for today. Our first speaker is Mr. Muslim Koser. He is a lead products and technology at Volon Cybersecurity. Sir has over 22 years of information security experience with a core focus on cyber threat intelligence, cyber risk management, and cyber security consulting. Sir has set up cyber threat research team for SCIT partners in India, which was one of the first teams to have worked in this domain. He is also credited with involvement in establishing national level CERTs and consulting for various corporate CSIRTs. Thank you for joining us today, sir.
Most welcome.
Our next panelist for today is Ms. Neelo Tripathi. She is Security Practice Lead at ThoughtWorks India. Ma'am is experienced in vulnerability assessments and penetration tests of web application and network, along with red team engagements, source code reviews, threat modeling and design reviews of web applications and APIs, data leakage investigations, configuration reviews, and social engineering engagements. She has been a primary trainer for basic infrastructure hacking at Black Hat 2017, organized Recon Village at DEF CON 2017, and Social Engineering Village at NullCon 2016 to 18. She is currently in the review panel for NullCon. She is also an OSCP, that is, Offensive Security Certified Professional. Welcome to the panel discussion, ma'am.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next panelist is Mr. Shyam Sundar Ramaswamy. He is lead security and threat researcher at Cisco Umbrella India Security Research. Sir is a two-time TEDx speaker, GREM certified malware analyst, Cisco Security Ninja Black Belt, and a trainer of cybersecurity. He has delivered talks for several conferences such as Black Hat Las Vegas, Qubit Forensics Serbia, NullCon 2020 Goa, Cisco Live Barcelona, and for several universities and IEEE forums in India. Sir has also taught in Stanford University's cybersecurity program and runs a mentoring program called Being Robin, where he mentors students all over the globe on cybersecurity. We have with us Mr. Kushagra Mehra as the moderator for today's panel discussion. Sir is a senior solution specialist at Smokescreen Technologies Private Limited and specializes in adversary countermeasures across several industry verticals. A subject matter expert on deception, he has worked on over 30 at-scale enterprise deployments, including at Fortune 500s, to design campaigns and mitigate blended threats and reduce the attack surface available to advanced adversaries. He holds a master's degree in computer security and resilience from Newcastle University. We have one more panelist joining us, so we'll wait for a few minutes for her. And then we can start the meeting. I would request everyone to please wait for a few moments while our final panelist joins us.
Okay. Rimi, Mridul has joined.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Hi, everyone.
So our final, hi, ma'am. So we
Yes.
have our final panelist here. Welcome, ma'am. So our final panelist for today's panel discussion is Ms. Mridul Uchil. She is Senior Director and India Site Head Cybersecurity at Visa. Ma'am has been in information technology, security and software architecture, web and mobile application security, cloud security, and technology risk management, exhibiting leadership roles for over 16 plus years. She has been executing and managing enterprise product security engineering, application security architecture, and security automation at Visa. Ma'am has won over 20 patent awards. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome to the panel discussion today. With this, we have introduced all our panel members for our panel discussion. And now I would request Kush sir to please take over the further process. There is a slot for Q&A post the panel discussion. So I request the audience to put their questions in the chat box, which will be taken up after the discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Remy. All right, folks. So we have quite an esteemed panel here today. We'll be discussing a holistic approach to defense, and we'll be seeing a variety of areas of expertise from each of these folks. What I'll do is I'll actually get started right away with the first area of discussion that we plan to have. That's how this pandemic and remote work that it's brought about has increased security difficulties, security risks, and how we can manage those. So I'd probably start off by asking you, Muslim, like, given your experience in threat intelligence and the like, what have you seen since the pandemic has begun? What have been the results of it? What kind of attacks have you seen more often than not? What kind of intelligence have you seen in the wild?
Okay, thanks, Kush. So this has been really interesting times actually, not only for the COVID things, but at least being as security professionals, we have seen very exciting times. I think most of people would have seen the graphic floating around on WhatsApp that if you're a security engineer, you're bogged down with lot of work, and then people don't have time to do. The reason being that attackers have actually taken this opportunity as a good money minting business over a period of time. And the main thing which we saw was, as everybody was working from home, people had their didn't had the proper IT infrastructure at their home. Neither the organizations were prepared to deal with these kind of situations. So what they had to do to enable that kind of things, they have to enable some sort of services which will have people connect to their office and then work. So those services included Citrix, included virtual desktops, RDPs, remote desktops, and also all these, because of all these things started opening up. This was kind of a jackpot for all adversaries, and they actively started targeting these technologies. Citrix actually was one of the most targeted ones, because toward the end of the last year they had a couple of very severe vulnerabilities which were there, and when these machines started popping up on the internet, and then people started, okay, oh wow, we have these machines which are unpatched, quickly fire the exploit, gain the access, breach into the network, and then you have a playground over there. Similarly, I think everybody has heard, and there was a lot of hue and cry about Zoom, because Zoom was utilized as kind of a communication platform. So we have heard a lot about Zoom, but what we have not heard is that not only Zoom, but Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting, and all of these technologies were targeted, and they all faced similar kind of fate, as well as in terms of vulnerabilities. If you go and see on Microsoft website, there were a number of Teams vulnerabilities as well. Teams also faced a lot of outages as well. Going to the VPNs, I think we use VPNs to connect to our office network. So attackers thought, okay, if what if I can go ahead and target VPN users? So they target VPN, Pulse Secure VPN, Palo Alto, Fortinet, whatnot. all those big providers were targeted. They had open vulnerabilities, and utilizing those vulnerabilities, people gained access. Now, what you will do after gaining access, right? The next step is that mint something from there, either plant a ransomware or plant something over there, or advertise the database. So if you see, if I would like to do a comparison between what has happened in the first 6 months of, or 6 to 8 months of this year, as compared to the same period last year, the attacks have at least 4 to 5 times increased. Uh, we have not heard anything about attacks on Indian organizations like a couple of years back. Not much. We used to hear one odd, but if you see and go ahead, open news channel or newspapers, and then just search cyber attacks on Indian companies, you will find loads of them. So nobody is spared. Everybody is equally targeted, and with the freedom of your adversities between India, China, India, Pakistan. So those actors also had a very free run all across. So I think I would say that it was a free run for threat adversaries, where they were able to target and compromise majority of corporations. And I think what I see now is that people have taken cognizance of that. They've tried to build a lot of things which were not in place. So it's all learning, right? Nobody has that kind of experience earlier. Now with this experience, people are trying to build up over and above how best these things could be done.
While we're on the subject of exploits, Shyam, given your work in threat research, what's the kind of stuff you've seen? You've been working at Cisco in the threat research team. I'm sure you might have seen quite a bunch of interesting stuff.
Yeah, so usually the threat actors play on this game called as fear. Okay, it's like as simple as when your spouse says, "I know what you did," right? You start blabbering even though you're not supposed to, right? It's just a tagline. I know what you did.
Speaking
So
from experience.
yeah, you maybe or maybe not. So so that's how it begins, right? See, threat actors always use the fear as a blanket. But given this COVID, I mean, the pandemic phase today, it's all the more obvious for them to use it. So when we started doing this research early back in March, right, we started a lot of domains getting registered in the name of Wuhan-clinics, Bangalore-clinics. So state name, city name, hyphen followed by test kits and all those things, okay? So these were not actually armed and running, but they were registered and kept for a very cheaper price. So, and then if you started seeing the trend after April, slowly people started getting emails saying WHO has given you a guideline, go to your nearest place and then get tested. These URLs were actually, or the domain names were there. So they started using the typical emotet pattern, where you open a Word document, it all looks fine, but in the background it does something. So that was the trend of attacks that actually happened, started happening. Emotet started getting in, Sodinopki ransomware started kicking in. So these were very deadly, nastier and stealthier attacks. That's the surprising fact. So what happened was, I don't know if it's a coincidence of worlds, but in this COVID phase, I mean, at least we've seen the attacks. Usually they're obfuscated or stealthy. Now they are obfuscated, stealthy. They're like multiple payloads. A same threat actor actually is now dropping a Trojan and a ransomware. So I mean, they're all probably working together, or a lot of these things we don't know because we don't choose to. They don't choose to reveal these things, or we don't choose to reveal who's the actor where they're operating from for some various reasons. But as Muslim mentioned, right, Indian organizations are not targeted much. At least across the world, governments have been getting targeted. So there was recently Cisco Talos worked on a research where there's, I don't know how to probably pronounce it. It's a tongue twister. Is Azerbaijan government or something, where their diplomats' passports were exposed. So they are constantly targeted as like a freeware application where you download a PDF to doc converter kind of a thing. It's like a Trojan that sits in your computer. It targets specifically energy sectors. So sectors are probably getting targeted next, and they have become country-specific threats. Like nuclear ransomwares are affecting a lot of factories and manufacturing sectors. But considering in this pandemic phase, there have been a lot of people, since they're working from home, they are targeted towards their personal data. And this can be bizarre. The rise of OTT watching has also provoked a lot of things, because free is a very dangerous thing in our country, right? The word free comes with a price. Okay. So there are a lot of people who install these free VPN stuff, leave the torrent part, and that opens a lot of backdoors for you. And a lot of people are using the free OTT survey saying that the series is leaked out here and they download stuff. That adds to a lot of blackmailing stuff, picture encryption, and a lot of these are the common things that are probably been seeing. And this is actually called as mal spam, malware with email, has increased tremendously to a 70% in this COVID phase, especially. This is one of the things I've seen. A lot of things, but if I probably stretch on, it'll kill it. But one last thing, uh, uh, there is a lot of military grade level of encryption that is being followed in most of the Trojans. Usually, when you reverse it, you can understand what the Trojan does. But to save the Trojan, to save the config file, it's 3 folds or 4 folds encrypted today. The traffic is also encrypted. It's been a tough time. I don't know what I wished for last year, saying that I have less work. I think I shouldn't have told that. Now it's a lot of work off late. So that's what we are seeing off late now.
I'd like to just take it to Mridul with this. Uh, you've touched on some of the threats, Shyam, and some of the exploits that are being used to sort of target various vulnerabilities and get some to whatever end, whether it's monetary or data. Mridul, you have some experience with zero trust networking, with other sorts of approaches to defense on that side. What's the kind of stuff you've been seeing more on the defensive side than the adversaries?
Yes, so I think I'll just take threads from Muslim and Sham. So today's world, we all know, is a digital world, right? Already so many access points are increased, and we were already in the realm of how to protect our assets in terms of IP, whether it's network, whether it is digital devices, whether it is a endpoint. All of that was already under threat. And this new pandemic has come and it has increased this attack vectors and the attack surface so much that everybody is now remote and we have to enable people working remotely. So this new thing called, I think it's not new, but I think zero trust architecture that we talk about, right? See, in earlier, before we came into this pandemic, at least few companies and most of the companies would say, inside network, my guy is green, right? Everybody's green. Outside network, everyone is red. I don't trust, but I trust people inside. Now, even that notion has gone. That's why it's called zero trust architecture. Means I do not trust anyone. It's like absolutely no trust, whether the person is inside in the company, inside VPN, outside VPN, in my company network, private network, doesn't matter anymore. Because the access points and the networks, the variety of networks that we have to deal with to enable each and every employee to work in this situation when nobody's in the office, right? Everybody's remote, and that remote is extremely remote. It's like people are working from villages, their hometowns, which were never imagined before. We imagine at least people will work from cities and homes and all that. Now people are reaching everywhere, all around the world, all around in India, where we have never thought about the places, and they're enabling new networks there, which were never existing before. And we have no idea about that security, like how secure those networks are. So it is becoming so vulnerable to even think about. And every company's policy always remains to a data breach, right? I want zero data breach, because one data breach for any company is minimum 3 million plus the reputation plus the brand. So that has to be on top. So how do we enable people with this? We have to enable people also. At the same time, we have to make sure security is in place. So what I think companies started doing in terms of policies, it'll elevate your cyber defense threat level. Normally we have number of levels, so it's always now elevated. That means more monitoring, more application logging to see what people are coming in. And in zero trust, we are not trusting anyone. So every person who is coming in the network, through that network, we have to do extra authentication layer, extra authorization layer. We do not trust. So we have elevated in terms of multi-factor authentication, or say behavioral analytics, where you can actually look at the keystrokes or different angles of the footprint of the person to authenticate either seamlessly or ask an extra factor. So person coming in from anywhere elevated the extra level of authentication, authorization to check in, whether it's a person, it's a device coming to access your resources from any kind of network. So those kind of things are basically, I think all companies started implementing. And zero trust architecture is not limited to anything, no, not a particular technology or a device. It's like, I'm not trusting you at all. Now, how do I make sure that your access is legit? And when there are more endpoints, like earlier we were giving probably a company monitored laptops to people. Now it has become so vast that supply is not enough, demand is more, supply is not enough. So we have to enable people from their even personal laptop through different networks. Now more endpoints are there. So how do we make sure of DLP, data loss protection? We cannot have people exfiltrate data. So data exfiltration policies are new. So all those things are becoming a new realm for us, because I have seen, at least in a few of the companies now, when you onboard vendor or when you onboard contractors, it's not like we are able to give them company affiliated laptops. They can use any endpoints. It becomes mobile, it becomes laptop, it becomes anything, right? That they can access. The access points and the attack vectors are more now. How do we make sure now they are on their private personal device, how that device endpoint is secure? So those many policies are in place, and all companies are getting into that mode right now. So that's what
Yeah,
I would say.
thanks. That's actually quite, that ties right into some of the stuff that I was hoping to ask Neeru about. Neeru, irrespective of, whether these are technical exploits or whether it's just a matter of compromising a trusted device, at the end of the day, these are sort of targeting business processes and weaknesses on the people side. What's the kind of stuff that you've seen there, and what's the kind of responses you're generally seeing on that?
So I think agreeing with all other panelists here. So it's a huge shift in the perception here, because earlier we had a lot of uniformity in the way we were looking at our networks, because this was office networks. We could actually configure it in certain way, and it was actually easier for organizations, whether we realized it or not. And now there is a huge shift. So we have on the applications or server side, we have moved to the cloud, and then there are and many organizations, I'm talking about everyone here, and there are many of us now, because of the pandemic, moving back to the endpoint. So it's very endpoint focused, the attack surface now, and hence there has to be a lot of policies now, although we always had, right? So companies always had some of these policies. They were not always remote first. Now that you're remote first, everything has to be customized to that. Obviously there has to be zero trust, but there is a lot of responsibility and access that people have. So while there is technology that we're working with, every time, depending on how much controls you have through your devices, how tightly coupled they are, whether you have a DLP, whether you have domain, to push policies in your devices, whether you have it or not, there are many small and medium businesses where that's not existing. And hence the responsibility of the users grow immensely. Now you will see, because we've already talked about devices, there are also, for example, there are a lot of new tools coming up, because for example, I'll just take up a simple thing. We are talking about management, right? So now the management is remote. Okay, so there are tools coming up for that. Development is obviously was anyways partly remote. We also have now channels of communication between the client and otherwise also, that people would tend to use, because there is also a general group think and responsibility that goes in when you are with 10 different people from your office, because they're using a certain channel. Now there are so many different channels of communication, and then you also have to look at that attack surface where you're discussing maybe your product information, your intellectual property might be there. There may be other, in fact, even sensitive data that could be there, which is floating and it's not meant for storage, but it's being exposed anyway. So there are channels of discussions that are also may not be official, and so there have to be a lot of policies defining that, hey, these are our approved channels of communication. These are our approved set of tools. These are our these are our policies for the device and the way you handle the device. And depending on how your organization is, if you're updating and patching those devices also, because there are a lot of not only tooling, but also software that you have in your devices, right? Your own OS is there, your code base may be there, there are so many other things which are there. So that needs to be patched from time to time. So all of that needs to be now seen with a different light and needs to be enforced in a certain way with a certain level of awareness that can only come if the employees do it on their own.
Yeah, but to a certain extent, I'm sure, picking up from the point where you mentioned there has to be a certain level of enforcement. I'll perhaps take this back to Mridul and then to Muslim after that. There have to be certain policy approaches that are enforced through technical means. So, what would you say? How has the need for policy enforcement and just generally policy formation changed thanks to the pandemic?
Yes, I think overall the cybersecurity policies are always enforced, but now it has become multifold and more monitored, I would say, in terms of pandemic. When we talk about cybersecurity policies, about how you protect your intellect, how you protect digital data that flows through different means, right? Especially networks, endpoints, devices, whether it's enterprise, cloud, all where, everywhere. Because the final goal of cybersecurity and the entire defense that we have is there has to be a zero data breach, as I said, right, for anybody. Um, and the even in terms of policies, before policy, I would say the mentality and the way shift has to happen, and which is happening is in we don't think ourselves as a defense, we or don't think ourselves that we are doing a cyber defense. Now this is an age where offensive technology, earlier it was not kind of legal, right, it was kind of hacking. Now that has become a nice word as an offensive technology, and people are learning it and people are mastering it now. So we as in the people on the other side of the fence, where we want to defend our systems, we have to go to the other side of the fence, like the red side of the fence, and think like hackers. Unless we think like hackers, unless we break our own systems, I am sure every company has a red team, right, where we want to put a team which can attack our own system as if they're outside. So unless we break our own system and we think like hackers, there is no proper defense. There is no defense we can do, because we have to be one step ahead of hackers. If we are only being reactive after they attack, then how do we defend? That is not a mentality anymore. So we have to hack our own systems and see how it can come. And we have to be proactive. And that's where I think few things come up in terms of investing more into learning paths, where how do I learn from these incidents, because we do get incidents, right, we respond to that, how fast we respond, and how we invest into learning from those transactions and incidents using ML and AI patterns. So that is something new that cyber policy is investing, that I would say it's not just the security part of it, is not the defense, it is how using the latest technology you can learn and you can be more proactive, you can go one step ahead. That was one. The other thing I would say, from cloud versus on-prem, right? Because as I think Neelu was also mentioning, a lot of applications nature have changed now. In terms of supporting this remote working capabilities and pandemic, uh, the many strategies have come, as in how do I protect, how do I enhance my DLP policy, how do I make sure data at rest is encrypted differently, data in transit is encrypted differently, because encryption levels have increased, right? Other thing is, when I'm putting my application, I have to earlier that probably that application was only accessible in the VPN, in the company network. Now I have to make it open, because how do I enable my remote workers? So when I make it open, whether I make two versions of application, one for cloud and one for on-prem inside, that is one thing. Or when I put everything in cloud, now how do I do a cloud security? Because we know there are AWS, Azure, and GCP. These are three top leading clouds that we have. So when I put my data out in cloud, you have to be immensely uh, going deep into all the cybersecurity, right from the, it's like a defense in depth, right from the perimeter to data. What are the different controls I have to put in cloud to make sure I get the same amount of security as if everybody's accessing inside? So that is a challenge I think everybody's seeing, even we are seeing, because there is no apple to apple comparison. On-prem, the controls that I have, can I put exactly same controls in cloud? No, we cannot, right? Because cloud comes inbuilt with something. Structure is different. Ease of use has to be there for cloud. It is a multi-tenant environment. So how do I secure users who can access what they are supposed to access? And when it is in cloud, how do I put my firewall right from perimeter, inside firewall, outside all of that, till the data protection, right, to the database, dam, data access monitoring? How do I put all of that together, and how do I have complete monitoring trail, application logging monitoring trail, right from perimeter to data? And how do I expose? Because this is one thing we figured out, when we have an incident response team, say a cyber defense, they are asking for more needs into the logging framework, application logging. How do I have those events so that immediately when I'm taking action to that incident, respond to that, how do I mark that as a zero, like a severity 0 1, where I have to bring down the application versus I have to take an action, a while later. So these are the things I would add in terms of enhancing the existing cybersecurity policy to make it more monitored and make it more depth, like defense in depth from the security perspective.
Muslim, is there anything you'd add to that? Rizal made quite a few good points in terms of you can't just have a reactive approach, right? It has to be a lot more proactive. Anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, what Mridul spoke about had really good points in terms of the way the security manager or security teams are taking care with respect to policies for the end users. Now, what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit from the other side. Other side is that as we being more technical people, or we being involved in security operations, we always think like security, and our bread and butter is cyber security. So we try and ensure that we try to cover all those policies very effectively for all of our organization. Now let's consider each a large organizations do consist of variety of different kind of people, right? So there are people who are technical, there are people who are not technical, there are people who are basic, people who are in admin department, who are in HR department, who are in finance department. So there are variety of people over there. So people who are in security companies, tech savvy, they will understand most of the time what we talk about in terms of enforcement and all those things. But people who are not from this department, what they normally see is a roadblock towards the effectiveness of work which they were doing. So with more policies, more stringent policies, the work of these people get affected, right? So ideally, then what people do once once their work is getting affected, then they try to look to ways and means how I can bypass these policies. So and that is the point where that has to be seen, that the policies needs to be strong, but they do not need to be very strict in terms of, it should be should not tie the end user in a way where they are tied so much that they start looking for alternative ways and means. Because if your end user is looking for alternative ways and means, then there will be a policy breach. Not now, later in the time, something will happen, because one guy will find a loophole, and then everybody is going to follow that process. So those kind of things is very important. And some things are which are very very simple, as we talk a lot about password reuse. Right. So it's a very small thing, at least for people who are techies like me and you people. Okay, we should ensure that password should not be reused across variety of places. But does that happen? No, that doesn't happen. Right. Most of the people who are not very technical enough, what they will do is they will have a set of 3 or 4 different passwords, which will be used in a round robin fashion across all the website wherever they register, whether it is a official domains, or where they're registering on the third party sites, right? And these are the main very small things. So these are the things which attacker try to utilize, because for this thing, this is the directly you are giving access on a platter to the adversary. Because what happen is, if you use same passwords within your corporate systems and a third party systems, like for example, we have seen breaches in Dunzo, Zoom, and Yatra, and all those places. We have seen their database breaches, and if you have the same password which is lying over there and in your one of your corporate systems, it is a piece of cake. It's a very small, very automated scripts are running. The attacker will able to identify in 5 minutes how many passwords are working, right? So once that is done, you are giving a direct access to your email or your systems inside the network. Now again, there will be more questions about, no, a lot of companies says, no, we have a 45 days password reset policy. Now what will happen after password reset? Do you think the end user will choose a totally a different random password? No, he's going to change a bit here and there, and the password is going to be utilized in the way as it is. So these are the things which I think, on a policy perspective, these small things can be looked upon. People can be educated in terms of in making sure that the things are followed properly. Things should not be very tough in terms of implementation, but it has to be very effective in terms of monitoring has to be there, so that effectiveness is brought from there. I think that these are the few points which I just wanted to share on this topic.
Yeah, those actually lead quite well into sort of the next area I was looking to explore, where you can't have the policy be adversarial to the job you need to do. If it's your job versus policy, your job is going to win. You're going to find a way around the policy.
Right.
Perhaps I'll ask Shyam about this. Shyam, given your role as threat researcher, right? You're used to seeing a lot of the offensive side, but you use it for the defensive purposes.
Yes.
How would you suggest we can go about influencing people's behavior, but in a way that isn't just mandatory enforcement and that says you must do this or else it's a policy violation?
So, see, if you see the whole ecosystem, right? I mean, Mridul spoke about it, Muslim spoke about it, right? So the whole trend is, I'll be very honest with all of you. What if Stack Overflow is down for like 2 hours? Game over, right? Everybody's game is over. Now, the dark web is actually becoming like a Stack Overflow for these attackers. See, whatever white paper is available to me is what is available to them also from the resource standpoint. Now, if you know, everybody knows IaaS is actually infra as a service, PaaS is a platform as a service. Okay, but there's something called as MAS, which is malware as a service. So they're like, I cannot name the source, but they're like shocking stuff that we've seen 6 months back, where the malware kits, I mean, the infra is being rented out. Okay, so today you need not be like the top end guy who thinks like a cyber attacker. It's like the Stack Overflow. The code base is written only by like 7 to 8% of these attackers. It gets floated around. Okay, so this is a big shift in the landscape today. Now, earlier you could probably predict models, see how it actually works. But today the reuse of the code is everywhere. I mean, it's become hybrid. So that's one shocking thing. I'll just come to your point, but I'm going to start off from there. Now, this is one. The second thing is you need not even have any programming language or like to have an attacking language. You just need to pay money. So they give you, there are 3 accounts: light, premium, and super premium. Okay. So I'm not talking about
these guys know branding and marketing.
Yeah. So I'm not talking about Netflix plans. I'm just talking about the malware as a service plans here. So the premium is like, you don't get HD videos, but the premium is like, you get the dashboard. You actually get the dashboard. You can even see where your attack is doing well. And you can even target specific countries, organizations, or whatever you want. Now that's the level where we are heading to. Now, the second point is we're talking about organization security. But the most impacted is the medium scale business, if you observe, okay? There have been a lot of credit card scams happening off late, not through a point of sale device, but there are tons of medium scale online shopping vendors today. They have used pandemic as a very big market for themselves, but there are poorly implemented controls. What? Say they use these, I cannot name that platform, but there's a platform that most of them use, 60% of the people use today. Okay, but that is where a lot of credit card skimming is happening. That is in checkout, there's a vulnerability where you can take the entire credit card numbers. That is put on sale for the premium price in the dark web. Now this is how the model and the ecosystem is actually working towards. But when you talk about enforcement, it should probably come from the security team starting first. Like threat hunting should be a very active exercise that every organization should start practicing. Right? We are not in the world anymore where we buy one product and we stay safe. No, right? Even your phone has an update each week. But to see the policy, you have to enforce something on employee doesn't probably work that way. You have to probably, as a security team, you should start hunting threats and then tell the employees that, look what we found. This is what we are doing. And then put a point towards them saying that it's not us just blocking threats. It's you who matters the most, because human is the weakest link in the security chain, correct? And if you see most of the attacks that has happened in the pandemic phase, it's not just due to the CVEs, it's just the human beings. So they are basically tricked into installing something or opening something. It does not leverage the CVs actually. It just leverages human beings' emotions. So I don't think anything forcing would probably work, but probably be transparent with the employee saying that this is what we are doing. See, as an employee appreciates the effort if it comes from top. I mean, it's psychological, right? Don't tell someone do it, otherwise we are doomed. Telling that I am fighting a war, I need a helping hand. Help us to save the gate. So that's motivational. So, I mean, that's how it is. It's probably has to be pushed in.
I think Neelu is probably well placed to speak to that. I know that she's worked a lot on the people side of the problem also. Neelu, how would you suggest, organizations generally go about building not adversarial policies, but supportive policies, but that still enforce security?
So, yeah. So policies can form basis of something, but adoption will, like I rightly agree with Muslim here, the adoption will still depend on people, right? So like I said, and that meant a lot of things, that there is a lot of access and control and responsibility with the users today, because there are a lot of different technology that we are accessing. And contrary to our traditional understanding, the world is moving really fast. So if you have noticed this, especially in the technology side of things, in applications or even infra, things have moved very, very fast. There, if you go on the ground and tell folks that, hey, this is what you need to do, that will be like just heard and forgotten, because so we have to understand the reality, which is business first, and for a developer, it's function first, right? And this is how things are on the ground. And one thing is that, yeah, we can always say that, hey, this is how we have to, you have to help us out in this, but we also have to create the right sort of framework for them to step upon and do what they need to do. So what will create that? So there is one way of looking at it. I think traditionally we have always looked at it like, we'll do some attack campaigns, we'll do some phishing campaigns, we'll tell them, hey, see, this is the result and this is what we're getting. Depending on what scale you are operating at, that may not really be enough, because there are so many different considerations that they have on a daily basis. Think of many organizations which are doing multiple releases a day. I know there is automation and there is continuous deployment and stuff that enables all of this, but there definitely are a lot of other things that they need to do throughout the day. So think of a day, and then if you are just talking about attack campaigns one-off times, this may not be enough, because of the very complexity of attack that has come up, right? Like Sham pointed out. You also have to build on your strengths. So as an organization, mostly, which is not on an offensive side, or is not an offensive security kind of an organization, we are all into products, somebody is into services, others are into e-com and finance and whatnot. We have to build on our strengths, and building our strengths means that building those defensive layers on a daily basis, where you're doing it through what you do functionally, doing it through what you do to cater your business, rather than standing out as security and trying to add that one thing. So while you have your for example, you have a complete life cycle to your application development, and then you come at the end and say that, okay, we'll do a pen testing and that's done, right? Or we'll do this testing and that's done, because that's generally not enough. And we know on the offensive side, it's not enough, because we have attacked and we have seen it doesn't work. Now, one basic framework that you can put in is definitely automation, which will make it very robust. Is that you automate a lot of these things around your life cycles, if you have any kind of development, or in your organization also. So whether it is for vulnerability management in general, or for application vulnerabilities in general, have a lot of automation which is relevant to you and which is optimal. It never has to be an overkill, because especially when in development you talk about an overkill, it immediately reflects in not and bypassing, because coders are also hackers in the other sense of the word, if you understand. So that is not the way to go about it. We need to talk about automation which is optimal, and only as much as is good enough for a certain business context. So that is where it should stand, and automation should be there to help them get that immediate feedback and tell them that, hey, this is a critical issue, or this is not so critical, or whatever, and then help them or enable them take that call and become self-sufficient. They become independent and they start making security decisions. What that does is, over a period of time, that will develop their knack of thinking critically, and then help them also code securely, rather than having a standard security coding training at the beginning, which they might forget when they code, and they are like, okay, this is a function, and I need to just deliver the function, you know, that's all my job is. Once they start thinking that way is when the job is done. There were also other ways in which we used to do. So we used to do red and blue teams, and you know, those exercises still make a lot of sense. But those are also, I would say, not enough, because they are happening at a level where your IT team gets to know about it, maybe not the rest of the organization. So there definitely needs to be a lot of overall awareness that needs to happen for the employees, for them to make those decisions on a daily basis, because there are a lot of these decisions they are making, you know, keeping something open, leaving the default password, you know, when they're setting up something. For example, just think of a DevOps person, and they are just setting up something and they have so many things to set up. They might just leave everything default, and tomorrow there could be a compromise. Like I think there was a compromise in CCleaner earlier, a few years ago, where their development, this thing was compromised, and they got access to a lot of things. Trojans were pushed and whatnot. And hence they build security in. So this is what we more focus on, is you build security into the application in a way that the whole delivery lifecycle is secure, the application is secure, and that applies to obviously infra also. And it becomes slightly more easier, I would say, with cloud coming in, that you can automate a lot of these things. And you can have infrastructure as code, try to have hardened configurations from the very beginning, so that, you know, later you can just come back and assess from time to time. So all of those things should be in place. But that awareness, building that awareness, comes with maybe, you know, daily or weekly rituals that these people do as a part of their development, or as a part of their work. And that has to be very carefully crafted so that it's seamless and it doesn't stand out, and as well as is done for them. Modeling threats around applications, and you know, so that there has to be a lot of fundamentals ingrained, so that they finally get a zero trust mindset. You know, that zero trust mindset, if I could call it, is more important, because then a lot of things get taken care of.
You know, I sort of, given the variety of topics we've been able to cover during this panel discussion, I sort of feel like, I hope you folks have been taking notes, because I think we basically solved security today. But, you know, on a more serious note, just before we close out and go to Q&A, I'll just go in reverse order of the first round of
I just wanted to add something to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just if I may. Okay, so I was liking the points that we were talking about the employees, right? Especially how do you enforce policy on employees? Very interesting, because something that you enforce, people will rebel. It's given. It's a human nature, right? It's a very much human nature. So I like the thing that Shyam said, that we have to make them part of the army. Like we are fighting a war, and we should be fighting together. So that it comes with a lot of this awareness, education, making them part of your team, right? You should not be looking at your company and telling, oh, we are cybersecurity, we are on some different level in the planet, we are like superpower, and whatever we are saying, we are enforcing policy, you better apply. That doesn't work. And if you see the industry trend and the statistics, more than 50% attacks are insider threats, because employees are the one, they go rogue. Either they go rogue, or they have the most access in the system. If you see, attackers have to do a lot of work to get to a point where they can do a breach, but employees have everything at free at hand, right? They have the most access in the system. And if they don't know, like what Neelu is saying, that education, awareness, like whether they are using same password, they are leaving their system open. I think in our group there was one, as a prank it used to happen, somebody leaves the system open even for a minute, people used to wait for it, send an email, and some nasty emails about parties and this and that. So it was like a becoming a, you know, people used to just look out, even a second you leave and go. But that created that awareness. Now nobody does that because everybody's afraid something is going out of my email box. So, you know, employees have so much of power and access inside the system because they are close to systems, right? So that awareness is very important in terms of the data usage. They should not use USB sticks, Google Drives, social media so much that they export data. So all that stuff. And then there's, of course, the passwords. Because if you see in entire cybersecurity, if I look at it, three things are very top. IAM, which is identity access management. You know, who can access what is very important. And then, and how do I make sure the power that that employee has is utilized in the right way? So earlier, people like in the company who actually have access to production systems, Now we give them access only required by the time. Suppose you only are doing a CRQ or a patch deployment, only get it for 10 minutes. It's on demand. It's not like even for a day. So such kind of things are coming. It's like dynamic access given. Otherwise, you're doing CRQ, that person gets 1 day full access. That is also now is not good, right? That employee having 1 day full access for the production system. So only get it when you're about to do CRQ, taken it out immediately. So those kind of new technologies coming and giving that access. Other thing I was saying, identity access management is one, second is malware, and third is patching. Patching has to be very, very right. You have seen trust, right? Coming so much nowadays that CV happen, code execution is happening, code vulnerabilities, remote execution. So you have to be on par of patching of all your softwares, all your systems all the time. And of course, malware, everybody talked about, I think Trojan and ransom, everything, right? So what I wanted to say is when employees have so much access inside, they become insider threat. Their activity has to be monitored also. And also somebody is taking advantage of their access, like employees clicking on phishing email. I think Sham mentioned in the beginning, which is very important in this pandemic. People have fear and attackers develop on that fear. The moment I see anything on COVID, people click nowadays, right? I have to get something here, there, all that. So those are phishing attacks happening so much. So that education has to be given to employee, that when you are in the system, in accessing system, suppose I have logged in now, my access is in the system. With that access, if I click anything, data can be exfiltrated. So those kind of education awareness is very important, and employees are the most people whom we should worry about.
There are probably 3 points you've touched on there, that sort of answer, you sort of, without me asking you, answered the next question I was going for, which are what are the areas of growth you see in the future? I'll probably take this to Shyam next. Thanks for the input, Mridul. I'll probably take this to Shyam next about what are the areas of growth in the security industry you see, whether it's in India or global. I'm a little mindful of time before we have to go to Q&A, so maybe we can do it, just a minute or a minute and a half each.
Yeah. So like the quick thing that just I want to add to Neelu and Mridul's points, right? One thing that actually answers your question also. We should always work on something called as BM, breach mentality. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as Neelu was mentioning, saying that, right, when you do the secure coding part and all, it's there. Now everybody does a fire drill in your office. You don't get fired probably like rare in the next 100 years, but you do it each time, right? Have a drill right there. So in my team, I actually lead the team. So I do a drill. So I suddenly give a malware to them, and then I ask them to solve it in 24 hours to see how effectively you are going to solve this problem. Now, that's what has to be done in every organization, right? Each team has given a breach responsibility. Don't take your backups when a ransomware breach happens, and then you don't even know if it's backed up or not. Now, have a breach day or a breach month where different type of breach activities are given to each of these employees. They have to act. You have to see the drill if the script is correct or not. Now that actually answers your question for training, and they're also part of the army.
Yeah.
So that is like a best bet you can probably do. I've been doing it for 6 months. It's been really successful because that day we don't take your notebook and search for page number 39 where you took notes how to solve the problem, right? So that is one thing. And if you'll probably answer your question pretty quickly and correctly, I mean, it has to be a 360-degree thing that everybody has to follow. The need for threat hunting, that every organization should do it, and also look, it's not about just buying services. You have to see how effective these services are. And then this breach mentality, that's the most important thing that we need to always think on our feet and constantly read about these things and see if these old infrastructures are shared or reused or all those things, and keep your organization basically safe. So that is a primary motive that everybody should follow from the threat team or respective.
Thanks. Just before we close out, I'll just go to Muslim and then go back to Neelu right before we close. Some of your responses to this might also help some of the students in attendance today decide what are the areas of the industry they want to explore. What are the areas that you see, having a lot of growth as a result of the change in circumstance?
I think in terms of that, we need to be innovative straight away, because we have seen so much of shift within few months. Typically, this shift comes in many years. It takes at least a decade for this to see these kind of shifts, which we have seen in few months, right? And now to bridge that gap, which this shift has brought in, we need to come up with a lot of innovative options and means. So if you're talking about the post-pandemic growth opportunities, then we might have to look about uh, now everybody is aware that now all the big companies, all the large organizations are allowing their employees to work from home permanently, right? So we see a lot of less people working from the office, more people from working from home, right? Now, how can you take that security to their home? Uh, Also, I can understand in these days of pandemic, we understand, okay, we people had one laptop, and then one laptop was used by their kids also for the schools. That same laptop was used for the office purposes, and same and some EDR was installed by the organization. So at least that security is taken care of. But these kind of things won't work in the long term. They need to be have a proper infrastructure where the connections which is coming from the home network of end users or from the endpoints can be effectively secured. So I think more innovation is needed on that front. Definitely some new technologies are coming up, but definitely there is gap over there. One thing I told you earlier as well, that one thing is important is that you'll have to look at the intelligence driven security programs. So in that kind of things, what you have to see is that not only you analyze threats which are coming to you, you have to go out as what Sham was talking about in terms of threat hunting. So you go out to external world, hunt for those threat yourself before they attack you. So you have to be more proactive, more predictive in those kind of fighting around those threats. For example, if a ransomware is being you have seen a ransomware in a organization which is next to you or in your sector, go ahead and quickly identify those IOCs, build in those IOCs, add into your SIEM or wherever it is. So ensure next time when those kind of threats comes to you, you are already protected. The thing is that you go out in the adversary playground, identify those threats, and then proactively build your infrastructure. So ensure that whenever you are hit with those things, you already have a resilience build up for that. So maybe I think those kind of things can be utilized in a more innovative fashion to work in these times.
Neetu, any inputs on the same point?
Yeah, I think that's a very good. I was also coming to that, but I'll not repeat it because the whole idea is to catch the pulse early. Because with security on the defense side, things are different. In offense, you have a single line of thought that you can go through and still get an entry point. But in defense, you have to think in layers, and you can build as many layers as you can or as is needed. And catching the pulse early is important for that. So those could be one of the things. What I would summarize would be. Automate as an organization, automate as much as possible in terms of your necessary controls. If you could automate most of it, it's the best because that helps with logging, monitoring, everything else, including compliance, and it helps definitely with having that visibility that you need for security. So automation really helps to leverage that as much as possible. Understand from a user and employee perspective, understand that there are no boundaries really, especially in a remote world, there are no boundaries. And so hence, if the assumption of security is obviously shouldn't be there, and that becomes your responsibility. And hence, as an organization, build
Neetu, I
basics
think
on
we're
scale.
facing some issues with your audio. Okay, I think you're back.
Can you?
Yeah.
So the idea is to build basics at scale and educate for basics at scale, like Muslim was saying, right? So that goes a longer way than just patching for remote code execution CVs. And lastly, have a zero trust mindset as an employee, or inculcate that zero trust mindset or that critical thinking in employees so that they can make their security decisions at various times where they need to, and mostly end up making the right choices. So
I think that's
yeah,
a nice
I
way to
think
put a
that
bow on all the points that we've discussed so far. I think, in fact, Neetu sort of almost summarized all the points that everyone else made. Uh, I hope the students and other attendees have been dropping in questions. Just while the team is sort of getting the questions together, we'll throw in one final bonus from Sham. I think he had one final input, and then we'll go over to Q&A.
Sure. So like I really agree with all of them, like Neelu, Muslim, and Mrudul. So the automation is a very primary thing that needs to be done, but that can be paired with Muslim's point of innovation, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? I mean, I'm not talking about the buzzword. I've implemented it, so I'm very confidently
speaking
talking
from
about
experience.
Yes. So because since the attack infra is being reused, if you use machine learning to see similarity between the domains or the IPs of the infrastructure that is reused, if you have a predictive modeling there, it's very easy for you to take down these neighbors or bad infrastructures pretty easily. And as Muslim mentioned about the out of the box concept, right? Think out of the box. You probably need to, I was able to solve one problem using entropy. Shocking, right? So you can probably use innovative methods to solve cybersecurity problems, to solve like steganography problems using entropy also. So think out of the box. Don't think that your security structure or your problem solving is just limited to this. It's there's no boundary for it. Now, if you combine automation and the policy aspect of things, and then with all these innovations in mind using AI ML, I think we have an amazing platform for us to set up for the future and to build products with keeping the same zero trust architecture in mind. So that's what I actually had here. So
Thanks for that input. So I hope the folks have been that have the questions coming have sort of picked up. There's a lot of consistent themes that are picking up. Zero trust, of course. Ensure you're patching as quickly as possible. Automate what you can, and sort of start thinking like an adversary. Don't be hostile to your users. So at this point, I'll hand over to the team at SCIT for the Q&A. Any questions that you have coming in?
Yeah. Hi, Kush.
Yeah. Hi.
I
Hi,
hope
Anurag.
I'm audible to you. Hi.
Yep.
So to start up, this discussion was really quite insightful. So there is one bugging question to me that has been coming up since a long time. So my current dissertation involves researching about game-based learning when it comes to information security training and awareness. Like we are having a lot of CTFs, a lot of red team versus blue team exercises, so on. So while reviewing the literature for this dissertation, I came across that since as back as 2005, there have been a lot of papers published which have like quantitatively proved this hypothesis that game-based learning really brings very good results when it comes to information security training and learning about new attack vectors. But at the same time, not a lot of companies are actually taking these papers into consideration and implementing such game-based learning exercises. For example, even Neelu ma'am was talking about how we need to train people on how to tackle these attacks. So, what are your takes on that?
Yeah, perhaps Neeru, since he's referenced your work, perhaps you'd be best to chime in here.
Okay, hi Anurag. Thanks for the question. So while I myself enjoy CTFs a lot, at least used to. Nowadays, I don't get time. But and this is great for learning. So any game-based learning is good for any subject. So is security. But I think if you look at it, when you go for a real, attack or a red team or a pen test or a real, I'm sure for those who are doing more hardcore attacks also, you may not really relate as much because real world. So in a game-based learning, what happens is the system is intentionally vulnerable. And sometimes it might have just one focused issue that you can exploit, like a gate, and then get the flag and go forward. But in a real life, you might get multiple or you might get nothing. So it totally depends on how it's configured, how it's coded, how it's implemented, and all of those things. And that's where I have seen a lot of things work. So for some of the good hackers out there, they would be able to exploit some system issues or configuration issues, or some of them, when nothing really works, we also exploit people issues, which is where your phishing and other things come in a red team. So those things are generally not there as part of CTF, where your social skills or other skills could also be used to complement your attack, because your payload is not enough many times. And for a successful attack, sometimes you would need to call the person, sometimes you will need to mail or anything else. So many times there are various channels that you have to use, and as an attacker would use anything to exploit, and get an entry point, versus in a CTF where it's a very focused kind of so these are meant for, it's good for learning, but until you actually encounter real world systems and work with them, or or against them, it's difficult to know the realities of that area, and what to secure or what to defend against also, both ways.
Just a quick addition to Neelu's point and to Anurag's answer. We've been doing a lot of game-based boot camping. I mean, teaching people the gamification way. Like we give the malware to them when we run boot camps across the world and say that, see, you are like Ethan Hunt. You have 2 hours, solve the problem. So that is exciting for you to learn the trends and attacks and patterns, but it's all up to the individual how you apply it later when it comes. It's like you run the game, you play the game, you probably cannot win it, but you probably know the attack methods. Unfortunately, the attack methods change in 2 weeks. So it's like it's a cat and mouse game. So.
Yeah, I
Always
would
be
say
learning, right?
it's maths and physics, so you know the equations, but how do you apply is like that's
Yeah.
it.
So yeah, it's just a question.
Really, thank you for that. So the next question that is coming up is from people who are watching the YouTube live stream. So there's one individual who's working on IoT devices, and we have seen that there are an increasing number of hardware CTFs. I mean, I attended one back at Nalcon this year. So, are there any industry best practices when it comes to securing hardware devices?
If no one on the panel is saying that, I'll just chime in there while maybe folks want to think it over and see what points they can add. I'd say that probably the simplest way to think about it is there's already a lot of security models folks are familiar with. I would say the simplest way to think of IoT security is think of it as Linux server that you don't have as much patch control on, right? Most like IoT light bulbs are like, it's a tiny Linux server with a light bulb attached. That's why you'll see a lot of the old attacks from 15 years ago getting reused today. There's of course a lot of IoT specific attacks, but that sort of helps you set a baseline where your responses then are actually IoT focused rather than just missing a lot of the same old exploits that existed 15 years ago. Not exploits, same old attack techniques that existed 15 years ago. Perhaps other folks on the panel have something to chime in on top
Can
of
I
that.
add something to it? Yeah.
Sure.
So when it comes to IoT world, right, it is always two parts. One is, of course, that hardware device, which is giving you more access point. But if you look at it from the holistic purpose, it won't work, just hardware won't work as it is, right? It has to have a part of software which is actually transmitting your data, whether the device is taking command remotely from somewhere and executing that command and giving the result, and that result is also communicated, right? Of course the operation of the device, but that entire operation is not just hardware, it has to be with software. So it's a combination of hardware and software, even if it comes to IoT. This is what I would say. And all the, I think, hardware security that comes with it's basically the core of it is also some kernel, as I think Kush was saying, right? So that has to be secure, and there are many tools and many devices come with that inbuilt. But it does just having that security won't fly. You have to have the combination of the software which is actually transmitting data. So the transformation of data on the fly, whether it's on any network, just like we said before, that is more that I would look at it. How do I secure that? And we have many ways, as we spoke before, right? So look at it as a holistic approach, because only device is not going to work unless you program it, unless there is a remote program that is sending commands to it, getting the results back, and then making it operational. So just have that holistic view. That is what I would add to it.
Yeah, just quickly add, although this is not an area of expertise for me, but if you look at, so any of these new things that come up, while there is a lot of subject area to it, but there is also a lot of basics. So security basics won't change for even an attacker or for a defender. You do have your sensors and you have your controllers. Sensors are sending the data to the controllers, and the controllers would be in servers. So you will have the server setup. You will have, so look at the attack surface. The attack surface will consist of the sensors. It will consist of, other than the physical security, I'm not going there. The controller will have its own set of this thing. And you also have servers which are there. And this whole network actually interacts with each other. Now, you also have to look at the baseline tech stack, because it is mostly based out of the firmware, which is the main thing here, is also based out of maybe C or other similar tech stacks. So what applies to the tech stack, what applies to these servers and sensors will apply to the whole IoT system that you're attacking or defending in that case. And hence accordingly you can look at what needs to be put in place to either defend or prevent such attacks.
Yeah, so thank you so much. That answers the question well, I guess. So another question that is coming up is India is recently in talks about the whole privacy data protection bill. And so what are its implications on us as a developing country? Will we be able to implement such a bill? And one of my friends recently shared a insight on this, that in India, he asked that how many times have your parents asked before entering in your room? But that person wishes to say is that like privacy is a mindset, not a regulation. So what are your takes on that as a country as a whole?
Muslim, perhaps you have something to say there. You've been fairly silent for a while.
Yeah, it is actually it's very interesting. I would say. When we do not have any bills, people say we don't have any privacy acts. Now there is a plan for a privacy bill. Now we are trying to identify, do we need it, or how will implement it. Of course, we'll be able to implement it. That's not a problem. So you look at GDPR, see, right? So GDPR was there, it was enforced, and now people are implementing it no matter what. So it has to be taken in that front, because the bill coming is a really welcome thing, because it was long due. Privacy is normally thrown into a dustbin in our country for very long time. Once we have these kind of frameworks, when people start thinking, so you talked about privacy, having privacy mindset. So mindset will not come automatically. Mindset will come when some hammer comes to you over a period of time. And I would say this is a welcome thing. And the hammer over here could be in the form of fines and penalties and those kind of things, where companies are not going to comply to variety of security standards just for the certifications, right? A lot of companies go for ISO certifications, and they use that thing as their sales pitch. Oh, see, we are a ISO certified company, right? Now with these kind of bills coming in, if you are not good enough, whether you are certified not certified doesn't matter. If you're not good enough, you're liable to pay, or whatever the fines are, right? So in these kind of scenarios, I would say, no matter what people say, this is definitely a welcome step. Over period of time, we will learn. IT Act came in I think around the same month. IT Act came in 2000, year 2000, right? So privacy bill is coming 20 years later. Over a period of time, we were not very late movers in IT Act as well. In 2000, the only some large big companies had those kind of regulations, but most of the world did not had. So I would say we adopted that thing on a pretty decent time, and I would say for Privacy Act as well, we are delayed, but still I think we are on a right track. As long as we are able to fulfill those things, I think that should be good enough.
Yeah, that was really helpful to understand the whole concept around privacy. So there's another question that has come up. So we were here talking in this discussion about using AI/ML to automate or to enhance security. So what are our takes when it comes to auditing these tools which are using AI or ML?
I think one thing I can add there is when there is a tool, right? When you're automating something and there is a tool, you have written some piece of software. The system has capability of auditing each and everything. Like when you bring a business process and automate into software, you write some three stack, whatever tech stack related architecture, and you put it, all the newer systems, the softwares, they are capable of auditing, like who is the actor who logged in, who has done a change from what value to what, to the new value, which attribute, and at what time. So system gives you that kind of audit capability. There are a lot of frameworks available on databases today, like Javas and something like that, right? Where it is the moment you have database, the changes happen, the framework picks up the change even at the minute attribute level and logs that. So the moment you say there is a tool, it comes with it, like audit trail and audit information is very enriched today, that comes with it. And you need to know how I'm putting holistic approach to give that audit information to executives or to auditors when I need what is supposed to be given. So that is something I just wanted to quickly add.
There's one point I'd add to that, which is, the benefit of automation is that not only does it speed things up, but it ensures that things are done consistently the same way over and over again, whereas a human might deviate from process depending on whether they've had a bad day or not. But that also comes with the flip side of if you design your automation poorly from the outset, then even your errors are consistently repeated, right? So I'd say you probably spend more time on not just creating your automation process, but actually sort of identifying the intent that you want to implement. So then you can have it implemented reliably, rather than just automate something right now and then fix it again 3 weeks later, and then fix it again 3 weeks later, and so on. It makes more sense to put in automation that's more thoroughly thought out from the outset.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. Just to add to both of your points, right? See, when you spin up, if you're building AI ML, you're not using a standard tool. You are building your own tool to do the AI ML aspect, right? So that is actually done in a company where you're given a machine with all the access controls approved, and after a lot of process, because this is sensitive data. That answers the first question, right? It's all taken care. The second point with what Kush mentioned, right? It's not applying the AI ML to whatever data you have. It's about you identifying the data and running the right attribute. Just because you have a file which has got 400 attributes and then you have a good machine learning algorithm in Stack Overflow, you can apply it, right? If you put to production, it's going to hit a lot of false positives. You have to spend a lot of your time in identifying the right attributes. Think what gives you the right result, even it's 2 or 4. Say you have 15 attributes, even if you're adding half a value to the attribute, that's a winner. Don't see about the quantity of saying how much you're adding, but if you get the process right on automation, right, at the first go with these attribute identification and then applying the ML, and then you have a real winner. You can make a big difference.
I think just to quickly add, so to limit the blast radius, I've seen quite a few companies which rely on AI/ML are also now anonymizing a lot of that data before they're even sending it to the AI/ML system. So if there is a compromise, and if that was the question, then that gets limited through the blast radius and through all the anonymization and filtering that you do before sending that huge bulk of data into for processing.
Yeah, thank you. That answers the question really well. So another question that has come up is that in this pandemic situation, we have seen a lot wherein in the initial days of the pandemic or even now, when someone used to test positive for the virus, a lot of times the hospitals used to leak their personal information out that so and so person residing in so and so area has got COVID. In fact, a lot of times I have come across people's blood reports or swab test reports. The copy of that report has come in my WhatsApp, and people have been increasingly avoiding such people and keeping distance from them or ostracizing them maybe. So, given that PDP is coming now, how well will we be able to manage the personally identifiable health information in India?
So I don't do a deep dive into it much. I think I have better people to answer this question, but this is the most important thing in the need of the hour. Okay, the healthcare system and the data is very crucial. I worked on a case. I cannot name the country, but there's something very serious. One of the hospitals was actually hit by ransomware, and this was constantly happening for a while. And then their medical records were leaked. But later, when we figured out, we worked with the intelligence of the country, we found out that there was a lot of organ stealing going on because the insurance data that's getting leaked from the system has their income bracket also. So there was a bit of social engineering done for the below poverty line people, and they were convinced to sell their organs. So this is that dangerous, this healthcare, and as a country we are adopting the healthcare mechanism, and this bill is actually coming into picture is really the need of the hour. And there should be very strict and strong regulations on that because it's very critical data, and that will probably put a fear on people who are developing, right? Anybody can develop an app, nobody knows where that app is, the data is going. So that this bill is going to be a real difference, game changer in this industry. I'll pass it on. I just wanted to question this point.
I think it was a really interesting point, Sham. What you talked about. Now, going back to the question which was asked, but the premise which was put was that due to the COVID and the results was shared on the WhatsApp. Now, over here we have to see that in these kind of scenarios where we are in currently, the hands are tied like this, be it hospital or be it anyone. That data has to be presented to the law enforcement, to the municipal office, so the data is not coming from the hospital. From the hospital system. The data could be coming from anywhere, because there are a lot many moral policing going on across the board, where the information needs to be shared with the local municipal organizations. Then the data comes to local inspector, then the local MLA and MP, and whoever is handling those areas. The data is being passing through like this in over a period of time. So definitely there is issue in terms of medical data that has to be treated separately, and this issue has to be treated separately, because this issue is the system issue, where we talked about the mindset thing. Who cares if my Aadhaar card number is there? I will write it down, give it to you. Nobody care what kya karega ye. What you will do with that my Aadhaar card number, right? So the mentality is not there. What I will do with that data, people don't understand. Now Sham talked about the reasoning about that. Okay, that data where they were collecting the income as well, to identify about the organ transplant thing, and then all the black marketing of those things, or actually targeting people with that data. Now the data can be utilized in these manners, at which people don't realize, people don't understand. So I would agree that in terms of regulations for medical data, there has to be a strong regulation. In US, we have had the HIPAA and all those things. Those regulations are good regulation. Those can be deployed here as well. We can have that mandatory. There is no need to go ahead from scratch and build a regulation for healthcare industry, which will again take 5 years from now. So identify what are the good regulations. Identify 4 or 5 which are very good ones across the world, and then ask companies to comply to any of these, to ensure that you are effectively secure on that front. So definitely regulation should be there, but there is no need to go ahead and bring a new law for that, for medical industry. It will take another 10 years. Who wants to wait for that? Just go ahead and do things from now onwards.
Yeah, I just want to add one point to what Sham and Muslim said about this awareness of identity, right? And how identity can be what identity theft means, which is very low. I see in country like us, people are easily, as we just said, easily giving their identity information, whether it's a DL number, Aadhaar card number, PAN card number, and they give it through their help, domestic help, or through their office people or anybody, right? You just take a copy, give it. Like, look at the countries like US and all, nobody will utter their social security number other than the doctor or their employer. But here, everybody, you just take a copy, anybody ask you Aadhaar number or PAN card, they see just my number. What people will do anything about it? They don't understand the notion about identity theft here, which is also, we need to have more knowledge and awareness in terms of even the medical. As I think, I don't want to repeat what Sham and Muslim said, that definitely utmost importance right now, the kind of data that gets leaked, and it's somebody's personal information, really personal, about their physical health, their biological body, which nobody should be knowing other than that person himself or herself. So that kind of awareness and that mentality is not there in our country, which has to come seriously.
I'd like to ask the whole panel this: would you agree that it basically comes to, people think law and policy is a slow moving process. Culture is even slower moving. That's basically what this boils down to, right?
Exactly. It's
And we don't have a privacy based culture. We have a very open culture.
100% agree.
Yes, it is
100%.
part of the culture. You are right. Yeah, anybody can ask any question to you, right, about your personal information here. We call it as a social bonding. It started with social bonding. Now it's on the other fence. It's social distancing, and we have to be mindful about what you tell, what you ask.
Can I have your credit card number? I'd like to bond.
And it's about us also, right? We are very over proactive, right? You take 4 photocopies or 3 Xerox copies of your DL and PAN card and throw it there. Now that can be taken by someone in the Xerox shop who can sell it outside, and you can call that, take the proof and give it your SIM card and do a SIM swapping. Very simple. Do a very little social engineering, do a SIM swapping. There have been so many cases where 60 plus people are targeted towards it. Right? Because 60 plus people or 50 plus people have the habit of taking 4, 5. I know people who have 12 Xerox copies of everything in their house. And then in urgency, they give it to your kids to write for some time or color at times. That goes to the trash. It's not shredded. It goes to the trash. that goes outside. Dumpster diving, you pick it up, you use it for all these attacks. So we should be responsible. It should be taught in schools, like what to use. You're teaching kids good touch and bad touch. You should teach kids about the importance of privacy. This is a mandate that should be taught in schools. It should come from scratch when you're kids.
I think in India, I think it's different because the idea of, so we had data always, right? You always had some or the other kind of data, but today you have information, and that's a subtle but a huge difference, because today everything is digitized in numbers. You have more detailed information which can be exploited in certain ways, because now those systems have come up where you can exploit, whether it is identity or whether it is insurance, or even issues like rackets of those kind of come up which would exploit. So a generation ago maybe that was not the case, a generation or two ago that was not the case, and maybe you could say we have nothing to hide. But today if you say that to your parents, I'm not sure what weird kind of responses you might get. I think that applies to, I think in the next generation onwards, we definitely should have that education around privacy where they understand what is okay and what is maybe not okay to share.
All right, thank you. I guess we can take one last question. So this question is around the point like Isham sir was talking about a lot of research on attacks and a lot of different malware and attack strategies that are out there. So someone has asked that what are some new threats or attack vectors on which there is research going on currently that they could be potentially the next big WannaCry or something.
Okay. So this probably asks about what work you have for the next 3 months. That actually justifies it. Yes.
I think it's more like where can I make money, starting now on WannaCry.
Yeah. So the new research that's probably going on today is mainly on steganographic exfiltration, where many of these threat actors have started sending out data via pictures and images, which is not caught by most of the vendors, is one. The second thing that we are probably, the second set of work that's actually going on today is the confusion created by the actors. So what actually happens is, for example, if you take a malware, there's a file, config file, we usually block the domains inside the config file, okay? But what threat actors are doing is they're littering the config files. They've put 1,600 to 700 domains inside it, which are good domains, shopping domains, e-commerce domains, government domains. So you do not know if these domains are compromised or acting as part of the threat attack, but you end up blocking it. So that is actually creating a lot of false positives with the products of the organization. Now we're doing some research on that to distinguish what are the good domains, what are the bad domains. Don't block anything and everything that sits inside a config file of a malware. And then we're using a lot of entropy based and a little bit of thermodynamics work based stuff going on malware to identify anomaly inside an image, not doing the deep learning inside image or pixel level learning that is actually going on, but doing a little bit on the taking malware and looking deeper into it using machine learning and instruction similarity to see if they are sharing their infra or their code base with others. So this is the sort of work that is doing. Unfortunately, whatever the work we do for 1 month, it's old, and again a new day, new work, new attacker rises from the ashes again and then catches hold of us. So we keep constantly learning. I think everybody in the panel will agree to it. I've not studied this much during my engineering or my school. It's everyday books, or at least every week books or stuff, because we have to be in the race, right? I mean, we have a responsibility of saving the users, the customers, our own family. I think we have to live up to it at least now. So that's
Could not agree more. To all the students who think, like once I'm done with my exams, I can finally stop learning. You've got another thing coming.
Not happening. Not happening.
Yeah, not at all.
That is the beginning actually. After
Yeah.
college is the real beginning. Yeah.
Hey, somebody lied to you if you say you're done with your college. No, it's not that. You have to keep learning forever. So yeah.
Yeah, so go back and enjoy all the more while you're
Yes.
in college.
Exactly.
No, that is the advice you can use.
Yeah. If you thought you can enjoy at work, sorry, wake up. You have to come and study a lot here. So.
And that's a real study, I would say, because it's ever changing, ever changing. It's
Exactly.
nothing what you learned yesterday, you might have to learn something different. And that is actually that is what you will enjoy, and that is the fun.
Exactly.
You don't want anything monotonous. So I think all of us should be happy and consider ourselves fortunate that the kind of industry we are in, it's constant new things, constant new learnings, and you will enjoy that. I don't think anybody now, this generation, wants a job where you do same thing every day, right? What you learn, you just apply that and keep doing. Nobody likes that.
We have a job that can't get boring, right?
Exactly. No, I mean, the more you do on this, right, you become the superhero here, right?
Yes.
15 times you solve a problem. I mean, I feel that I work only for that high, right? When somebody's not able to solve them, they just look at me and saying, "Can you work on it?" You feel like Dhoni to finish the game when you come in. So that high keeps me going, and I proactively learn a lot because of that. So it'll keep you. It's like an addiction. You will start learning, solving problems, working on your own. That addiction will continue for you lifelong, and there are no exams. You'll enjoy and learn, as Mridul was mentioning. You would enjoy and learn. That's the whole.
One important thing in this, I think, to close it out is that there is a stark difference of people who are from our generation earlier. There was a differentiation in terms of I want to work to learn. Right now, the differentiation actually has a different meaning. First question people ask us, how much I'm earning, how much I'm going to get paid. So learning comes second. So I would like to take this opportunity to tell all of you guys that please ensure that learning always should take precedence over whatever amount of money is being offered to you for a job pay package. Don't demand those things right now. You have to learn and then you earn. So it has to be a cycle like that, not earn, and not learn. So it's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
I think we have to remember that line from Three Idiots, right? Follow your passion, then excellence will follow you automatically.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And
That's
as like adding to Muslim, that nobody in this industry, no company, be very happy about it. They're paying you for you to learn. They pay you to learn. Nowhere in this world this happens. They give you money and ask you to learn. It's the other way around, right? We used to pay and learn. They're paying you now to learn and then work. That's the best part of it. So
So I think all the best to all the students and just enjoy your journey and be happy and think yourself the most fortunate to be in this kind of industry. Especially and even in that industry, this specialized domain for cybersecurity means there is no dearth of knowledge here. Right.
So thank you so much to all the panelists for patiently answering all the questions. It was a really healthy discussion. So now I would like to invite a faculty mentor, Vidyavati ma'am, to convey the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Anurag. We really had a very intriguing session. I'm sure that all of my students are going to agree to this. We I really feel that I have spent my day happily. And this was one of the days after a very long time where I could see the panel is also enjoying, and at the same time we all sitting over here are also enjoying. I think the students would agree with what I'm saying over here. So I know I'm between you and your lunch. But before I let you go, I would be failing in my duties if I don't thank everyone who has helped putting CSAM together. With this, I take opportunity on behalf of Team Metrics and ISACA Student Group to acknowledge to all those who have contributed in one way or the other to make CSAM 2020 a success. I'd like to thank our Director, Dr. Dhanya Pramod, and Deputy Director, Dr. Kanchan Patil, for their constant support and encouragement. A very big thank you to our keynote speaker, Mr. Sudarshan Rajgopal, and our esteemed panelist, Muslim Kaushal, Mridul Uchil, Neelu Tripathi, Shyamasundar Ramaswamy, and our own moderator, Kushagra Mehra. This was a very enlightening session, and you people have really covered quite a lot of points which I think the students are going to start researching about. I'd like to thank our sponsor, ISACA, and ISACA Pune chapter for being supportive and encouraging and taking interest in each activity we conduct over here. I thank all the faculty member and staff member for their support. A special note of appreciation to the accounts department and SCIT admin officer. Special mention to lab team to make this event happening online, and web and media for handling social media updates very well. My heartfelt thanks to Angelina for her involvement in CSAM and being a significant factor in success of the event. I thank all the participants for their enthusiasm and active participation shown over here. An event of this cannot happen without a great team working tirelessly. I would really like to thank each individual member of Team Metrics and ISG. I'm not taking their name because I may forget someone and I don't want that to happen. Thank you, team, for your contribution. Thank you all and God bless you.
Thank you.
So thank you all the panelists.
Thanks for
Thank you,
having us.
ma'am. Last but not the least, I would like to thank the entire panel discussion team, the junior team, Indira, Avantika, Akshay, Mithilesh, led by the senior teams of Vinayak and Sonal, to bring together a really good set of analysts so that every one of us could take away a lot of good learnings from this discussion, as well as have a really healthy discussion around the current cybersecurity topics. Apart from that, I would just like to let everybody know that the panel discussion is done, but CSAM is not. We have really interesting events coming up next Saturday. These events consist of a CTF, of a CSI activity, cybersecurity quiz, and a debate to let the students indulge into some really good learning activities, as well as understand and discuss upon the latest trends in cybersecurity. Last year, we also had a event called War Games, wherein we had a red team versus blue team simulation and a very hardcore CTF to inculcate the whole security as a learning and gamification as a learning activities among students all over India. And this year, we are following the same suit with similar events during CSAM this year. So thank you everybody. Do check out the events. For SCIT students, we have some good news. We'll be having some internal events for you guys too to enjoy and learn a lot. Thank you, panelists. Thank you for being with us here.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.